got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back into the channel. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, hit the button, engage in the comments. We will certainly get back with you on some of these picks. This is another DD Fantasy mock draft. I got myself, John Bauer, Ray Garvin, and today, fellas, we are going to do what the people want. We are going to go through a 12-team, 1 QB, start 9. No fancy scoring, JB. No tight end premium. There's no crazy bonuses or anything. Right. It is a half PPR across the board, start 9 lineup league. We're going to do a 2-round draft starting on the order on the screen. So it's going to be me and then JB and then Ray. And we're going to go in snake order. But before we get going, check out everything at the site, ddfantasyfootball.com. But I'm going to start with you, JB. This is your first mock. We've done one with Shane. We've done one with Mitch. So you're right into the fire with exactly the format that everybody wants to see. I know this probably isn't your preferred format that you play in most of your leagues, but I know that you are somebody that can adjust. And so I give you this format. And immediately, like, what is the thought with this rookie class when you look at it in this format through this lens? Like, what are you aiming for? What is your strategy if you're in one of these leagues and you got some picks? What are you thinking?
It really is a fascinating thing because I feel like when you get into a 1 quarterback league compared to Superflex or 2 quarterback, the value of running back by comparison is just so inflated, even against wide receiver. And you typically think about wide receivers, they have the longer shelf life, they have the more insulated value, but there is just something that happens when you look at it from a 1 quarterback perspective that really bumps up running back. So I expect this class, I mean, the class in general, it's such an interesting dynamic because the strength of the class is the running back position. You have the high-end talent, you have the depth, you have a lot of the profiles, you have some nice size guys coming out. Wide receiver, there's players there. It's okay. And then we have the strong tight ends. But like the quarterback class overall, that is not the strength. So looking at it in a 1 quarterback league lens, there really shouldn't be that many adjustments. Like, yes, quarterback's going to get bumped down, but that's not the strength of the class. So ultimately, there shouldn't be a huge shift in the way you approach it. And I can tell you right now, it's not going to make a huge shift in the way I approach it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely drives up the value of the running backs, not just the half PPR, but the fact that it is a start 9. And so when you're looking at what's scarce, what's hard to trade for in a league like this, it's probably more so running backs than receivers. Ray, given the class, I mean, you know the class better than both of us, I would say at this point, but how do you look at the other positions? We all know that there's probably going to be 2/3 of the picks we take are going to be running backs because there's so many of them. But when you're looking at the other positions, because you still have to have quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends, like how do you look at a position like receiver? Because this is more like an underdog format. It's shallower, it's half PPR. I know it's not best ball, but do you look at receivers differently in a format like this where it probably doesn't matter deeper that you go? Do you look at specific types of profiles, or how do you look at those other positions that people may go, ooh, that's not going to be that relevant?
Yeah, I think this question, probably the answer that a lot of people think I'm going to say, I may have given this answer 3-4 years ago, but today I think that the game and people really coming around to the notion that a situation truly matters. Situation truly impacts every damn position from running back to wide receiver. I'm not going to play that game this early. I think that at this point in time, while we're doing this exercise, the way that I'll continue to attack, whether it's 1 quarterback, super flex, tight end premium, I'm going to continue to draft the players that I believe are A, going to get the requisite capital. That's first and foremost. And then B, because I don't know where anybody is going to end up landing, I'm going to continue to draft the players that people like. ADV, artificial dynasty value, the sentiment, what people feel about these players today will 100% shape their outlooks on these guys come March, April, May, June, and July. And in a class like this where you don't have a bunch of dynamic rushing quarterbacks, how do I view them? I don't have to pay attention to them. And I think what people are going to see during this exercise is just how incredibly deep this class is, and we haven't even gotten to the combine. And just for everybody out there recording this right before the college football playoff game between Penn State and Notre Dame, and just this weekend alone between Penn State and Ohio State, you could literally have 25% of 2 rounds of your rookie drafts consumed by 2 teams in college football, and it's with multiple running backs. So it's going to be a fun exercise. I'm excited for this one, man.
Yeah, and we are going to make this draft based on what we think is going to happen in May. So this is not going to be like what we're doing today. It is using projections on where we think players are going to get drafted. Obviously, we don't know what situation they're going to go to, but we are going to use the draft capital argument. I think one thing that came to mind when you mentioned the ADV, Ray, is one of the strategies that people will kind of poo-poo on in shallow leagues like this is after a certain range, some of the players don't matter as much because they're going to be outside starter range in this format because it's shallow, right? But I think a little used strategy, and one that I think a lot of people struggle with is, and I know, JB, you've probably gotten questions about this type too. We get them on Trades in 5 all the time. Man, how do I rebuild a shallow 1 QB team like this when picks at the top matter so much and all the other picks are kind of just placeholders, right? And I think the shotgun approach in those formats goes against what most people would say matters in the format. Like, oh, it's a 1 QB start 9. That 3rd round pick doesn't matter. But if I have 5 3rd round picks and I take 5 shots, there's probably a chance that 2 of those guys ends up being worth at least a 2nd. Maybe one of them's worth a 1st. So having the volume approach, even though the format on paper may say, I don't want a lot of depth, if it's in the form of rookie picks, sometimes you want as many recyclable assets that kind of push the time clock forward rather than having a team full of veterans that you just can't move at all. Like to Ray's point, a lot of these guys you would just want to have for the pure, man, I could turn a 208 into a random 27 first, which ends up being a 102 or 103. Now I have to wait, but it gives me access to, that's how I might be able to get some future hammers. Because it's very hard to go, oh, just go consolidate 5 things and get Jahmyr Gibbs. You know, like no one really does those kind of trades. So it's really hard to kind of forecast how to get those difference-making players. So you guys ready to start?
And to that point, really quick, not to belabor the point, but like look at some of the running backs and where they were taken in their respective rookie classes. Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving. He wasn't like a highly coveted guy from the start. Tyrone Tracy, like these are guys that even in 1 quarterback leagues, you were probably getting in the 2nd, maybe very early 3rd rounds. So that goes to your point. Get those guys that can really elevate themselves and stand out. Yeah, you're probably going to miss 80% of them if you go with a shotgun approach, but there's a very good chance you get one riser out of the batch.
100%. All right, we're going to get started. So again, this is a 12-team start 9, half PPR, 1 QB lineup league. I am drawing the 101. Very easy. You can lock in Ashton Jeanty at 101. A lot of people ask questions about what is the 101 worth in this format, right? Like if I lucked into the 101, I didn't just get the 101, but relative to all the other assets in the damn league, this isn't just in Superflex. This 101 would be maybe a top 15, top 20 overall asset, right? Maybe a little higher, but in a 1 QB start 9, half PPR, like you can argue Jeanty's as valuable as any damn receiver in the whole league. You know what I mean? Like you can argue he immediately steps in as one of, if not the most valuable asset in the entire league. So like if you have this 101, people will go, well, I have the 103. What is it going to take for me to trade up to the 101? It's like, you know, I don't know if the 101 manager even sees anything on your team they're interested in. It's got to be at least, what would you say, JB? Another first minimum, if not more?
I think it's going to be even more of a premium. Like if you're sitting there and somebody offers you 103, 112, and 201, I don't think that gets accepted in this format.
No. I mean, you're getting more volume, but
can I be the contrarian here? Can I?
Yes.
I think we can all be right here, but I'll just say this. The only thing that can hurt this The only thing, and it has nothing to do with Ashton Jeanty. I'm telling you right now, once we get to the underwear Olympics and people see 6'2", 227 blaze a 4.41, another 6'1", 225 goes sub 4.4, and you start looking at them, and then we get to the NFL draft, and yeah, Jeanty goes 12 overall to Dallas, but Caleb Johnson ends up 22nd to the Chargers, and then you get another one going 30th to the Minnesota Vikings, and they all look and profile just as athletically gifted as Ashton Jeanty. All I'll say is that, in my opinion, that will, instead of paying up for whatever he's worth, I'll be like, I'm fine with Caleb Johnson. Like that's okay with me. I got another round one running back that's bigger and faster and stronger. I'm okay. It has nothing to do with Jeanty. I'm just telling you, right now, this could be true. The only thing I think can disrupt that is you get to the combine and people see, you're going to see it tonight. Nicholas Singleton is 220 plus pounds, and he'll probably run a sub 4.45 in the 40 from Penn State running back. That's all I'm saying.
So, right, let's say our teams.
I actually think that happens quite often where I know from at least super flex formats in the previous seasons, if you have the 101 and you're like, all right, I'm going to get a haul for this, I'm going to move back a couple spots. People are nice and cozy and they get comfortable. Hey, I'm okay making my pick here because now there's 3 or 4 guys. So I think that's a great point. But I think it will change as time progresses and we get to the combine. And there's going to be a little more hype around those mid to later first round picks. But man, Ashton Jeanty, Ray. Whew.
So, Ray, if I said I'll give you my 101, but I need your, and let's just assume both of our teams are dog shit, right? Like neither of them have a bunch of stuff, which means the 101 is like, this is my chance to turn this into 3 assets instead of 1, right? I offer you the 101, but you have to give me your 103 and your 203, and you have to give me your 26 first, which at this point is
absolutely not.
And that would not be an unfair ask, but you're probably saying you will take your chances on another guy emerging at the 103 before you take
absolutely.
That trade. Okay.
Absolutely. And Jeanty is my RB1. He's awesome, but I would not give that up for him now.
Okay. All right, JB, 102, you are up.
Give me, out of North Carolina, Omarion Hampton. He's got the size. He's going to have the speed score. He checks. I mean, I like to look at things. I'm not a film guy. I look at things from an analytical perspective. And when you look at Omarion Hampton, he is going to check every single box from a rushing market share, a rushing yard market share. He gives you enough upside in the receiving game. He's going to be a complete back. He's probably going to go in the second round, and that's completely fine. If this were last year, this is another guy that would be the running back 1. You know, I think we could look at a few guys here and say that because of how weak last year was. But Omarion Hampton, he's one of those guys that would be challenging for the 101 in this format, I think, across many draft classes. So give me Omarion Hampton. More than happy to take him at the 102 here. And if it's super flex, I'm still taking him there.
Interesting. That's good early nugget from JB that he's the number 2 overall player for him if it's even super flex. Ray, you have back-to-back picks. Not a shock yet in the first 2. What are you doing with 3 and 4?
Yeah, 3, I'm going Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa. I'm with JB. Omarion Hampton is my 2 overall player. So kind of sniped me right there. I thought maybe I'd be able to grab him here at the 103 spot, but I completely agree with that pick. Half PPR, give me Caleb Johnson, another running back that I'll say at least projects to be a top 50 pick as we sit today. I don't know if he's going to go round 1, but he definitely feels like in that Charbonnet A-chain range at worst in round 2 of the NFL draft in 25. And then I'm back up again, right? I get back-to-backs.
You do.
All right. And then at this point in time, and I'll just say scheduled and subject to change, I'm feeling some type of way about another receiver right now. But at the 104, because I don't want to be the one to have to break the ice on the next cluster and tier of running back, give me the right now consensus wide receiver 1 and Teteoira Mcmillian out of Arizona. I'll say this. When things started out, it was fun to compare him to players like Drake London and Mike Evans, and at one point in time, AJ Green. I mean, talk about hopium here. but I do think that he is a T. Higgins. Like, if I were to compare him prospect-wise to what I think his ceiling could be at 6'5", 210, I think he's going to move very well. Incredible production from the time he stepped foot on field at Arizona. I think T. Higgins would be a great outcome for Tet McMillian. So right now, even though he's got a little competition for me at the top spot brewing, he's still the guy. So Tet McMillian at 104, aka the 4th overall pick.
Can't argue with either one of those. JB, do you think that there's leagues where even if it's not a consensus wide receiver 1, that it even could slip in this type of format where running backs are just more difficult to get, that if there's another 1 or 2 that's in that next tier that gets top 50 capital, that you could easily see somebody going RB and letting the wide receiver 1 fall maybe even further?
Especially if we get some of the juicy landing spots but we look at every single year, everybody tries to project, well, these 3 or 4 teams need a running back. And it's like, they never go to the spots we want. You get Zach Charbonnet going in the 2nd round, but he's going to Seattle. Situations like that. But yeah, if one of these wide receivers doesn't truly separate themselves, like you said, to be the consensus wide receiver 1, I think there's a better chance than not that we see the top 4 picks be running backs in this specific format, 12-team, 1 quarterback, 0.5 PPR, start 9, where just the profiles are so strong. They are complete running backs. Like, it's really hard from at least an analytical perspective to pick any of these guys apart.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it on the recent Dynasty Theory too, that the running back health this year in this range of starters was better than it's been. And so, like, if you were in this format, if you look at the teams that probably took home the bacon or even finished top 3, they were probably littered with even running backs in their flexes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, they were rolling out 4 running backs because it's the dominant format. I think the other thing is to be a receiver that cracks your lineup as an auto starter in this type of format, given that you can't have as many of the Wan'Dale Robinson types that you want. Those cheat code guys are out of it because it's half PPR. I think it probably changes the dynamic of how receivers are valued a little bit too. Not that Tet McMillian is any certain one or the other, but I think in a format like this, you can kind of afford to have the JMO types or even the boomer bust guys. I kind of like even more in one of these formats because usually their price is still deflated because of the fact that
you said that now, man. But look, you said that now. This is the one, okay? He's not Wan'Dale. He's 6'5", 210. And here's my thing. Sure, but here's my bet against everybody else in the league, especially today. You won't pick the next cluster running back right. I'll make the bet that there's enough of them that are coming up that I'll take my chances on at least the one that everybody projects to be, if there's going to be an alpha in quotes at the position on the outside, that's the guy. You want to tell me, between running backs 4 and 20, that like this is the next one that needs to go ahead of him? I will make the opposite bet. I'll make the bet on the other side.
Yeah, I probably should. I'll save that logic for later on when I start breaking ties between receivers and running backs. But I just want to mention that the receiver view is a little different for me in a half PPR shallower league like this. So JB, you're up at the 105.
This kills me. If it was full PPR start 10, I would have taken at 105 the wide receiver that Ray was alluding to that he didn't take. And I have a feeling I know who it was, and that's the guy I'd be eyeing up. But in this specific format, give me Nick Singleton. Again, like yes, we might get a situation where they get an unsavory landing spot. But think about that 2017 running back class that is starting to get phased out more and more and more as we progress year by year. These top 4 guys, especially like Nick Singleton, he's right there with Omarion, Hampton, and Caleb Johnson. That, yeah, there's a little bit of separation for me, but another guy that's a complete back, sharing the backfield, but still being extremely productive in the better of the 2 there at Penn State. With the way the playoffs are set here for college football. Like Ray said, we got Penn State, Notre Dame here shortly as we're recording. More eyes are on these players as they go further along in the college football playoffs. It's not just a one and done situation. You're going to have more people watching this, more people tuning in, especially with that dynasty mindset. So for me, it's Nick Singleton at 105. Again, if the format were a little bit different, I'd be whistling a different tune, but I'm just going to slam home the running backs here.
Yeah, JB, I can't argue with you. I had a tier of 3 running backs. The other 2 are the other 2 in the college football playoff. So I'm just taking both Ohio State backs at 6 and 7. I probably would go Judkins over Henderson in this format. But, that's going to be one of the knocks on Henderson is, he's not going to be a goal line guy or, he's not as big as Judkins. But we have guys that are sub 200 pounds getting 23 carries a game. So to say we know what they're going to look like just based on, weight or profile, I think those 3 right there are the ones that if any of those 3, Ray, hit a good landing spot and get the capital, that they are in the group that could challenge Jeanty for RB1 just based on their names, based on what people have already thought. Not saying it's going to happen, but I think there's a clear tier of 3 drafting today that you take here, and then now it'll be interesting to see the order of what we all 3 see with the rest of the running backs. But I think those are pretty 2 straightforward picks for me.
Ray, let me ask you a question. In this exact format, I come to you. You have 107 with all these guys that we've seen come off the board, and I offer you my James Cook. Do you take him?
Yeah.
You take James Cook?
In that scenario, my mind frame, just how I play, everybody knows on the channel. I'm playing to win right now. I'm fine taking James Cook. Like I'm sure you can have him. Give me James Cook.
Okay.
The irony is
here's what I would do. Let me tell you what I would do. Here's what I would do. Would I take it straight up? Sure. But I'd ask for like a third back because you would want the pick and you're not going to let a third hang the deal up. I've said it and I'll continue to beat that drum. I want as many thirds and fourths this year as I can possibly get. So I just want to dart at a random running back that we're not going to select in round 2, and I just want a chance. I just want the dart, JB. Like you're even a fourth. If you were like, Ray, it's the 301. I can't give you that. I've got the 402. I'd be like, that's fine. Give me the 402 and the 412.
What if it was Kenneth Walker instead of James Cook?
Probably not. I'd take the ADV. I'd rather take what I could spend Henderson for.
Fair.
And I love that question because I think a lot of people would go, I'd take Kenneth Walker over James Cook, even though Kenneth Walker's never been as good as James Cook was last year.
Exactly. I'm good.
Interesting. All right, JB, 108. Now I'm curious if we go back to receiver.
I can't let him slip anymore. And in this format, I know it's half PPR. I know he's one of the top guys coming out that runs primarily, almost exclusively out of the slot. But I'm going to take Luther Burden here at the 108. In full PPR at least, I would absolutely, I'm going to say this right now, I would be absolutely shocked if in the first 2 seasons of his NFL career, he doesn't put out a top 24 season. I think this kid, he checks every box. The big concern for me is, Ray, you mentioned situation being so important. Like, think about the trajectory and the ups and downs that Jaden Reed has been through. Like, he's a really good receiver. But if they're not giving him the opportunity to get on the field because he's only going to play in 3 wide receiver sets, that's the situation that, could worry me with a Luther Burden. But even in this format, I think there's a very good chance that when it's all said and done, he's the wide receiver that, let's say in the first 3 years of their career, he puts up the most fantasy points out of this class from a wide receiver perspective.
Interesting. Very interesting. Ray, back to you. You got 2 in a row here. Very curious where you're going to go. And I think definitely Burden's going to probably not fall to the 108 for a lot of people. There's going to be somebody that wants a receiver.
So then where would he go? If he doesn't fall to 108, where does he go ahead of? Because I was going to ask you both, in this scenario, are Judkins and Henderson. They're day 2 picks, right? We're not saying they're both top 50 picks, but they're somewhere in round 2 to round 3 because that's where I think they go. They're in that range, 2 to 3.
I think we probably see every running back except for maybe 1 or 2 that are day 2 picks. Now, some could be picked in the early 2nd versus early 3rd, but yeah, we are to the point where we've drafted 2nd round, maybe even 3rd round running backs over a damn top 20 pick. That's where it gets a little difficult.
And for me, the threshold break is I'm fairly confident Tet's going to be a 1st round receiver. Like I feel confident in saying that. I'd like to believe that Quinshawn is a 2nd, 3rd round pick. I hope so, but I've seen in a sense, and I don't really think it matters. If he's in Brian Robinson range or like it doesn't matter. It's where they land. But I think this is the dichotomy you get to. Do you take the guy that is going to get drafted early, which should yield opportunity, or do you hammer running back for the format? And with the depth of the class, I think this is why I prioritize so I don't even have to play with it back here. Like I still love 15 running backs, and right now you just take the players that you kind of like in this range. So instead of continuing to talk, running backs that I like right now in this spot that I believe that are going to get the realistic capital to matter in a format like this. He'll be a riser after the Senior Bowl. Incredible production. Didn't get to play a lot in the college football playoffs, but I don't know, man. Give me RJ Harvey. Give me RJ Harvey right here at the 109 spot. You want to play this running back game? Give me RJ Harvey out of UCF. I've got him in tier 2. He's with Judkins. He's with Singleton. He's with a couple of other cats. But I believe that once we leave Mobile, like people are going to be talking about him a lot. So RJ Harvey, running back out of UCF, hidden gem. Put him in there at 109.
Okay, Ray, you got another pick. I am curious.
I just want to take one more running. I just want to take a running back before a receiver. So there we go. I'm going to take Emeka Egbuka. Putting Egbuka on the board at 110. He's my currently wide receiver 2 in the class. Numero 2, not Burden. Travis Hunter's kind of 2, but I don't think Hunter's going to play full-time receiver right now, even though I think he's a better receiver than corner. But yeah, give me Emeka Egbuka. You could have put him at 109. I was going to take Harvey at 109 or 110. Once you get to this range, you're taking the running backs you like, you got conviction on, you think other people will like, and I'm drafting based on how I'm not going to do this. We did this in the last 2 mocks. Oh, let me just take Ollie Gordon because that's the name. No, I think Harvey's going to get the requisite capital. I believe that he's going to be in a range where people want him, and I think his rise is going to start after the Senior Bowl. So I'm not playing on the fence. I'm not going to cop out and just take Ollie Gordon because it's a name people like. I do believe that after the Senior Bowl, people will be talking about Harvey amongst some other backs, but Egbuka right here at 110. You could have put him at 109. I was going to take Egbuka regardless.
Well, you got 2 in a row, but I think that another thing that we haven't really talked about is if you're in one of these formats, like all 3 of us are really trying to draft for the format, but your league economy might be still, regardless of whether it should be or not, Ray, it still might be a wide receiver saturated, wide receiver loving league. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Where like getting a 1st round receiver, it doesn't matter if that doesn't pass the smell test of what you should want in your league. Your league just hasn't adjusted to the fact that, a receiver like a Jaden Reed in a format like this really shouldn't be that valuable. But if your league economy says receivers are still harder to get, you probably want to look at that before you just draft running back. You know what I mean?
I do think Emeka's going to be a 1st round pick. I think he'll be a 1st round NFL draft pick, potentially the 2nd damn receiver off the board. So, I mean, he's coming out, even in half PPR, he's going to be a 1st round pick. At least today.
JB, honestly, I always look at like the scarcity element of players in each position. Like there's not really another receiver I almost want to draft. There's maybe like 1 or 2 more I'd even take. So it's almost like in this mock, I kind of want to take one earlier because there's literally 20 running backs I could take. And the receivers, it feels like everyone I'm drafting a day 2, like slot only guy or a guy that's not going to get the capital, or you know what I mean? It feels like the scarcity is at receiver almost, which you could then argue should push the ones you know are getting first round capital up. All right, JB, you're up 111.
Speaking of scarcity and, looking at the format specifically, well, not so much scarcity, but the big play potential. I don't know if there's a wide receiver that has bigger big play potential than Trey Harris. You look at him, despite the higher ADOT that he has, he's very good after the catch, doesn't run out of the slot, 14% in 2024. And, he and Jackson Durr, I know he's been banged up, he's been out, but when he's targeted, he has one of the highest quarterback ratings when targeted out of this entire class. He earns targets against man. And you look at his yards per route run, it's just off the charts. So give me the high upside play here at the end of the first round. I'll take Trey Harris.
JB, he was on pace to break records in college football this year prior to being hurt. I mean, the start was ridiculous for Trey Harris at the start of the season, man.
Yeah, it was I'm trying to pull up here. I had a tweet that I put out just with some numbers. Oh, my phone, it's so lightning fast.
It's good. What are your thoughts on that though, Scott? Why is looking that up? Was he one of the few? Was he one of the two?
He was one of the two receivers I would draft. I'm probably going to draft the other one just because after that, I mean, we've talked about this in the previous mocks. Like right now, I'm confident there's going to be a bunch of receivers that go on day 2, but in terms of telling the difference between them and in a format where I'm not sure the ADV is going to exist as much as it will with a running back, that even if they're a 4th round pick, they land in a depth chart where people go, oh, that guy's going to start right away. That's a much bigger hit in this type of format. So yeah, I mean, it was him and then the receiver. I guess I'll just take Travis Hunter at 112. And I think he probably fits the same argument as Trey Harris. He's risky, but he can have touchdown potential, which also has a big boost in a half PPR. Touchdowns swing things a little more in a half PPR format. So I think he's the last receiver I'd honestly probably take. There's one or two others maybe towards the format that I would look at, but there's just so many running backs. I'd probably just continue to take them. So we'll go Travis Hunter at 112.
Hunter at 112. All right.
Take Hunter at
really
112.
Quick. I found it. I worked hard to find this. So I'm going to say it. Against man coverage, 9.28 yards per route run, first in the nation among wide receivers with at least 40 man routes. This was as of November 9th, 52% targets per route run against man. That's first in the nation. 26% first downs per route run, first in the nation. Perfect quarterback rating when targeted against man coverage. I know he's a little bit older of a prospect, but I think, Trey Harris, baby. Trey Harris.
All right. So 201, I got some shit in the comments in the last couple mocks for taking Ollie Gordon higher than this player. So I'm not going to make the mistake just because I'm not really sure. And
yeah.
I do buy the argument to why, someone said they'd prefer. I think Ollie Gordon's going to have his own ADV. So it's not even a knock on him. But I think Scattaboo's the pick here. I think that's the next running back that could have some ADV, and he probably fits the format more so. Like this would be the one I would want to take him the highest. So I'm just going to take him here because I know Ray would take him if I don't. So I'm going to take him right here at 201. Give me Cam Scattaboo. Too high, JB? Too high?
A little too high for me. I know Scattaboo, he's the flavor of the week, right? Like everybody just loves what he did in the playoff game. But I think I would get shit on like you. I think I would take Ollie over him.
I think there's narratives for both, and I didn't want to let Hunter go. Well, I didn't want to let Hunter go, so I had to pick. But those would have been my next.
There are narratives now for it, but we're drafting like April. Yes. So where do you? if you're taking him at the 201, you believe he's getting significant capital, like
I
enough
think
to
he's a top 100 pick. He's a third round pick. Even if he goes in the supplemental part of the third round, I think he's mid third to early fourth, which to me, there's no difference. That's going to be entirely landing spot dependent. And I guess the thing is, I don't think it's guaranteed that Ollie Gordon is any higher. So feels like there's a bunch of running backs that are going to go in this range, and they're almost all going to be ordered based on where they land, and we don't know that yet. All right, JB, you're up 202.
I mean, Scott, you and I talked off the air before the show, and I made a joke about, man, maybe we don't draft this guy just because, the format. But we're talking about scarcity, and I know it's only 0.5 PPR. I know there's no tight end premium. Typically, I mean, I'm in a ton of leagues there. It's 2 PPR for tight ends. If we're talking about what we think is going to happen in a couple months, I know Tyler Warren is gonna, if not in the first round, like pick 33, give me Tyler Warren. I still think a lot of folks, even in this format, there's going to be a probably relatively smaller compared to tight end premium or even full PPR, but still a market where they're looking at their roster and they're like, I'm interested in a tight end. Like, I still think we could see a Tyler Warren go at the back end of the first, even in this format. So give me Tyler Warren. Even though on this week's episode of Dynasty Theory, I call him Jalen Warren, which I know I'm going to do several times just because of the last name, but give me Tyler Warren.
Ray, would you take, I know you haven't picked in a little while, but I think JB made a really good point. If we're arguing scarcity and almost guaranteed to have draft capital, is Tyler Warren a guy you would have taken over Trey Harris and Travis Hunter for sure? Like, does he feel like a safe pick, even though the format, he may not be a home run? It feels like it's locking in a B+ on the test. It's not going to be any worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I mean, hell, some of the back end, not even the elite tight ends in half PPR this year. I'm talking about the Tucker Crafts, the Zach Ertz, Laporta. I mean, they were scoring in total. I'm just looking at total scoring between 140 and 130. That's good enough even in half PPR. That's putting you in range where players like B-Rob, Kareem Hunt, Bigsby, like, sure. I mean, and people like those names. People feel good about, like, I've got Tyler Warren and I don't have to worry about it anymore. If he's as good as I think, I just start him and I never have to worry about the position anymore. Over Hunter, over Harris, like, honestly, if you flip Emeka Egbuka and RJ Harvey, at that point to the right, it's at this point is preference and just talking about names, because there's very little that really separates. Listen, I talked to Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl. He thinks that we've had conversations about some of the players that I'm going to talk about. He's like, Ray, these guys are going to go on day 2. And these guys are going on day 2. So I think right now it's so early. A lot of the names that people are saying are just names that we know, but I think there's a real world that Scatterboo is a top 100 pick. RJ Harvey's a top 100 pick. Tyler Warren gets the capital. So this is it's an interesting exercise, and they're doing this against somebody. Again, I'll give you my takeaway at the end, but this is fun. This should be exciting watching this go down, and I'll tell you why later.
Yeah, I think with Tyler Warren, the funny thing is you never know what you might look at him and go, okay, yeah, I'm drafting. Because I know if I was drafting him and I know I'm probably starting him at my tight end position, I'm not confident I'm just going to get the production right away.
Right.
But a lot of leagues, when people say, okay, in this format, let's say they have George Kittle, right? Like, this is not the format where his trade value is anything. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like just having him or having a path to be able to get him without having to pay something expensive is almost better. Like, if you're just looking to lock in the tight end position, I think there might be a world where you can get yourself a tight end with Tyler Warren. You might be able to trade him for George Kittle and a couple darts, just because the position as a whole is not viewed as I have to have this. So I think it's interesting. That does not feel like the sexy pick for the format, but man, in the second round, you get a guy that immediately could be the tight end 2 or 3 in the league off the rip. I can't argue it.
I can tell you, Scott, it didn't feel like the sexy pick, and look at me. I know sexy. All right.
Yeah. Well, you made it. I'll be curious what you do with the rest of the picks. I don't know if there's any other tight ends that get picked. We will see. But Ray, you are up for 2 selections here.
All right, here at the 203 spot, running back is where we go. And I'm going to take another player who I know a lot of people like, and profiles. He's big, he's fast, good receiving profile. I'm going to go DJ Giddens out of Kansas State here at the 203, 6'1", 210 plus pounds. I think he's another one of those players that a lot of people don't. How many can you name 5 guys on Kansas State's team? Most people can't. Probably couldn't name 3 outside of DJ Giddens and maybe Avery Johnson. But this is a very talented running back, a dual threat kind of guy. And here's my thinking, man. I know that a lot of traditionalists, when they think of half PPR, it's almost kind of like, oh, it's just standard. You just want the slam it up the gut running back who's going to get it 20, 30 times a game. First of all, that doesn't exist anymore. Like that guy's Derrick Henry, that guy's Jahmyr Gibbs, not all those other ancillary pieces, even Brian Robinson or Najee Harris. They're not handling the ball 20, 30 times. I think I just want efficient players. I want players who I believe have a unique skill set to be utilized in the NFL in a way like Chase Brown, to where you don't have to be some slug up the middle to be valuable in half PPR. And I believe in this format right now, at this point in the draft, we got a lot of those running backs available. And one that I've continued to talk about, Nagy and I talked about this kid, and we'll get a chance to see him here in a few weeks. I'm going Woody Marks out of USC. I think he's the draft's best kept secret at running back. He's the most prolific receiving running back in this class, and it's not even close. 261 career receptions. I believe every season in college he's had 40 plus receptions. In this final season, when he got a chance to tote the rock, he was very good for USC as well. Incredible running back. I call him Jahmyr Gibbs light. That's how he runs like. That's how he plays like. And I believe after this upcoming week in Mobile, once we're down there, he will also be on a lot of people's radar. So give me Woody Marks out of USC.
I love it. Got a chance to talk about other. I had a list of like 12 running backs. They were there, but probably wouldn't have even been in my next 3 or 4 that I took. So glad that we got them on the board in the mock. JB, back to you. You are up. What you doing?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ollie here. Down year, but age 19 season in 2023, he showed what he can do. And this is a kid that's going to give you enough in the receiving game. It's going to take an opportunity to get him there. But we talk about situation, and that opportunity, it's critical for a lot of players. But at this point in the draft, give me the upside. And again, this is a kid that if he does produce, because he has that name value, because we saw what he was able to do in 2023, I think his value could jump up a lot faster than a player that didn't have that strong baseline at one point in time. So give me Ollie Gordon. Hope he doesn't end up like the Isaiah Spiller route, but we'll go with Ollie.
Yeah, I mean, I think he would have been the next one off the board, but I'm glad you took him because I think I've taken him in the previous 2 mocks. And so it would have been just, I'll take him because he's here. So I get to take a couple different guys. So I'm going to just go with the next 2 running backs. I think Ray mentioned Chase Brown. I think we all oftentimes, I know I'm guilty of it, in a half PPR, I immediately am like, I don't want a running back that's not 210 plus pounds. You know what I mean? Like I'm biased against that, but we've seen a bunch of them that are even sub 200 pounds, and they're handling the same workload that the guys that are 225 and 230 are. So to think we know that weight just correlates with workload or how a player is going to be used is probably false. I mean, this guy was a do-it-all running back, scored a ton of touchdowns. So I think Dylan Sampson is the next running back off the board for me. I guess I sniped you. Why'd you take him over? Why'd you take Ollie over Dylan? Just
because I thought Sampson would have slipped to my next pick. Like I'm no joke. I'm sitting here staring at my board.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you see the reflection of my glasses? What's going on? 'Cause something's a little sketch.
Nope. I mean, I think he's interesting because he's going to be one of the knocks is in a half PPR. You know, he's not huge. You know what I mean? But it's also going to be, is he a guy that, you know, has big play potential, but is also seen as could handle a bigger workload than the weight says. So I think he's a clear pick for me here. And then the next one, then Ray, I'll let you chime in if you have any thoughts on him. I think Devin Neal's the next one for me. So I'll go Devin Neal with the next running back pick. Been around forever. I mean, people remember Devin Neal as potential top 3 back in the class 3 years ago and didn't end up in the class that he should have been. But I think both of these guys, Sampson and Neal, I'm confident are 4th round or better picks. Could go randomly at any range between pick 70 and 120. And that's the sweet spot range of they're almost going to be completely landing spot dependent at that point. But it's not, I'm not going to take a guy that I think could go round 6 and just hope they land in a good spot because they're probably on a tier below. So Dylan Sampson, Devin Neal. Any thoughts from either of you on those guys before we move on? Nope. All right.
I made it.
JB, who was up next for you?
I made it clear how I feel about Dylan Sampson. I probably startled all of our viewers, but yeah, like this is where I'm torn, and I've been torn in a few spots, but like the 208, like there's players on my board, like in a super flex format, in a full PPR format, in a deeper league that I'm looking at other positions that I would be interested in, but like, you know, I'm digging deep here. Harvey was taken, Giddens was taken. Oh boy.
Just pick the one you like, because I'm telling you, JB, that everybody's gonna say somebody shouldn't have gone there, or how didn't this guy go here? But the reality is, it is the beginning of January, and there is no clarity after Ashton Jeanty. There really isn't. And I think a lot of people are waiting for a combine or somebody else to tell them. So just have at it, man. Every running back that we have talked about, every single one, and I know no one's mentioned Harvey or Marks because y'all don't just know them. Like, these guys are legit, and people in the NFL space are talking about them. So I think everybody on the board has potential to be round 4 and higher. Every last one of them.
Well, he had a little bit of a bounce back season here. Had a very disappointing 2023. Ooh. Give me the big dog. Give me the rocket. Give me Raheem Sanders at the 208.
He was on my list. He was on my list. There's many others I would have taken over him, but he was on the list of this format. I could see somebody liking him depending on where he goes. You know, he's just probably not going to get a lot of capital, in my opinion.
I have 2 Devy shares still creeping because I was about him 2 years ago, and he's still creeping there. And
so you're trying to will the value of those Devy shares back into some.
I think
put out some content to maybe sell a couple of your league mates, right?
Yeah, like Raheem Sanders. By the way, he's on the block.
He's
JB's talking about him on the mock. Yeah,
he's projected to be a 2nd rounder, man. Can you just give me a 3rd for him, and I'll take it.
There we go. Lighten up. Yeah.
All right, Ray. 2 picks. Your last 2. What are you doing? Talk about some guys you like.
Yeah, I think if we're going to take Tyler Warren at the 202, I do believe there's another tight end that potentially could outscore Tyler Warren, depending on the situation and the usage. So right here, if I'm just going to throw shit at the wall, give me Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. I mean, he is by far the best pass-catching tight end in this class. I think Tyler Warren's the best overall complete one, but let's just have fun and say he goes to L.A., he goes to Kansas City, 2 teams that needed tight end. He goes to Dallas with Dak Prescott. I think there's a real world. People are like, hey, give me that guy who's going to go out there and catch a bunch of passes. You know, people will say, he'll go catch 100. I'm not going that far, but I do believe that he's one of the few that can challenge, and depending on the team need, I wouldn't be shocked if a team prioritizes him as the top guy. So right here, Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. And then an opportunity. So my tier 2 is eaten up, and that was DJ Giddens, Dylan Sampson, Singleton, Judkins, Harvey, Hendo, and Marks. So some of the running backs that we discussed were in tier 3 for me. But Scott, yeah, I'm long gone are the days for me where in half PPR, I just want this slug hammer. I don't. I want efficient players. I don't give a shit if you just carry it up the A gap 15 times. I want the guys that are utilized creatively in space and good situations and good teams, man. I think right here, Neil's off the board, right? Neil's off the board. A little, I guess, projection, because I don't know if he's going to be in the class. I don't know. But if he is, SEC, he's got the name and he's got good game. I don't know if he's going to declare. I don't know if but Trevor Etienne out of Georgia is my pick right here. I really would like to see if he's made an indication one way or another. And if so, I could make another pick. But if not, Trevor Etienne would be my selection right here at the 210.
I don't hate it. I mean, let me ask you this. I have two questions. One about your Harold Fannin pick, but I'll ask you this first because he came up earlier. If we would have done this mock 2 years ago, Ray, if we would have just used the half PPR, he needs to be a guy that can be a goal line player. Where would
he's right? He is returning. He's coming back 2 days ago.
Yep, he's returning.
Okay, get him out. Get him out, JB. I get a redo. Yes, I get a
Ray
redo.
gets a mulligan.
But I like Trevor Etienne. I was hoping he came back, but Etienne is gone. Raheem Sanders was in that tier 3 for me. He's gone. I'll take the guy that's going to play tonight. That's the running mate of Nicholas Singleton, and that's Katron Allen out of Penn State. He's a thickly built running back, not as dynamic as Nick Singleton, but coming from Penn State. If you're a running back, people will like you at some point, and he's a good bruiser. A lot of people are excited about him. I put a tweet out today saying that I thought it would be a Nick Singleton night, and everybody told me that it's going to be a Katron Allen night. So right here at the 210, give me Katron Allen running back out of Penn State.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of big backs, I think, that go in this mid to late day 3 that I had on the list. So he was one of them. So that's a good pick. I think this late there could be wide ranges of outcomes in terms of where those guys land. Ray, I want to ask you about Harold Fannin, because how important, if you're taking a tight end in this format where you know it's probably not the premier trade value in the league, how important is it that you get like early opportunity and production from that guy? Like, because there's been a lot of tight ends that you would say, oh, give me the Colston Lovelands or the Luke Musgraves, but like, are those guys ready to start today? And if they're not,
I picked Harold Fannin because you're going to know right away. Okay. He's either he's going to get the requisite capital in this assumption. He's got the capital. I just said, I believe he could be picked over Tyler Warren, which a lot of people believe that to be true. And if he's given that type of capital, he will get opportunity. So in that case, I'm doing the same thing that you're doing at 202 with Tyler Warren. I'm plugging him in there with the expectation of whatever I get is what I get, but he's going to get opportunity to give me more. This isn't me taking Mason Taylor for 2 years down the line. My projection is Fannin is getting the same type of opportunity and capital as Tyler Warren. Therefore, I'll take the shot on a player who is probably a little more explosive and athletic than Warren.
Yeah, I think that's important logic to point out with the tight ends, because I think that, Colston Loveland could get high draft capital, but I'm not sure he's ready to start day one. You know what I mean? Just because he's got some early production, but he's still 20, and that's just not. If you look back historically at the younger tight ends that are just the Raz freaks, and then they come in and you're like, okay, this is probably a play for year 3, and I don't want to draft those types unless it's. I like the logic with Fannin. Like, he's either comes in and he's kind of does what he did in college and he immediately is getting opportunity and targets, or it was a wasted pick, but I don't have to wait. Because what do you do if you have a guy like Luke Musgrave in this format? You're like, he's just a roster clogger that you can't trade, but you don't want to just cut him because he's still just turned 22. You know what I mean? Like, his profile is probably like a second contract profile more. So, JB, I saw you already locked in your 211 with another receiver. Interesting. Talk about it.
Alec Iamaner. He gives you the deep play potential. Last 2 years, over 14 yards from an average depth of target perspective. Doesn't play too much out of the slot. I very well could be, I think should be, maybe a late day 2 pick. But if you're looking for upside again, that's kind of the theme here with the wide receivers I targeted. They give you the big play potential. So give me Trey and Alec here in my 111 and 211.
Can't argue with it. It would be interesting to take the pulse on, some historical data on, because I do think you're right. I think he could go top 50, a second round of the NFL draft, and there's some running backs that we've probably taken that are going to go in round 6. You know what I mean? And that's once we get to the
standards.
And I'm about to take one that's probably going to be a day 3 running back as well. And we know when the class actually shakes out, and we're doing the draft stream, Ray, and we have 7 receivers that went in the top 2 rounds. You may really like, and I'll just tell you, I'm going to take Damian Martinez with my 212 as my last running back. But this is January. When we're sitting there on draft night, Damian Martinez goes in round 6. I better like his landing spot. Otherwise, I just drafted I drafted Chris Rodriguez over a second round receiver, and I'm going, I hope the guy ahead of him gets injured at some point because, Damian is behind Joe Mixon. You know what I mean? And there's still another guy in the depth chart. Like
let me, before you talk about Martinez, because I do think between Elike Omanor, Tez Johnson, Xavier Restrepo, Matthew Golden, Kyron Lacey, you're going to get some receivers that get picked in round 2 and round 3. And some of these running backs, while we like them, they could be. Woody could be a 5th rounder, just like Chase Brown. Wouldn't shock me at all. But are you going to feel good picking that 5th round Chase Brown over 2nd round Xavier Restrepo that the Titans took at 33 to pair up with Cam Ward, his old college quarterback? I mean, we say draft for the format, but I've seen it before. We'll talk ourselves into, Restrepo's going to get the opportunity early, and this running back, Scadaboo's the 3rd stringer in Seattle.
We just drafted 16 running backs. I guarantee if we were doing this in June, there's not 16 running backs we would value as 2nd round picks or higher. So I think all of us have taken at least 1 or 2 running backs where we're saying either their capital is higher than I thought it would be, or they win in a spot where I'm going to push them up and I don't care about the receiver draft capital. So if one of those 2 isn't true, there's a bunch of these guys where if they're a 5th round pick to the last year's Jets, you just don't even take them. You know what I mean? They're off the board entirely. And there's a dozen more running backs that fit that description. So I think this does look a little different when we get to the actual rookie draft, just the way that they're distributed draft capital wise. Thoughts, JB?
Ray, what you just said about Restrepo and Cam Ward, I mean, people were doing that with Bo Nix and Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin he got the day 3 draft capital, but there was that narrative, so people are going to build narratives for any reason they can find. I was still seeing Troy Franklin go early 2nd in a lot of places last year, and that's in super flex drafts. It was still happening because he had the name recognition, because he had a presumably wide open landing spot, and he had the college quarterback narrative. So we're going to see a lot of crazy things. And like you said, Scott, it's going to be fun to revisit. Like, I would love to revisit this exact format. Sign me up in June, and maybe half of my picks, I'm like, I don't want them.
I mean, this is hard. I mean, it's one thing to mock. It's one thing to mock on your own, right? When you do this on your own, and I've done plenty of them by myself, and here's the 101 through 112, because all you're doing is essentially prioritizing the rankings, right? You're giving a ranking. But when you're in this and you're trying to talk to and cater to a format, it is tough, because we did this exercise and we disregarded the wide receiver position entirely. And I'm like, there probably are some top 75 receivers in here. There probably are a few 2nd rounders, and it's early. We didn't even draft, and I know this was a recent addition, but LaQuint Allen, he absolutely should have been drafted out of Syracuse, 1,000%. If Giddens and Marks and Katron and A.O. Manor and Martinez, like, there's so many names, and that's my big takeaway every time, Scott, is look at the names that we did not draft, the names that we did not talk about. No Kyle Monunga, no Bashal Tootin, no LaQuint Allen, no Donovan Edwards, no Khalil Mullings, Taj Brooks, Jarquez Hunter, any of the receivers. No quarterback talk. Didn't even discuss Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart. So this is going to be a fun, fluid process, but it just lets you know, no Brashard Smith either. Like, it's just, this is, yeah. I don't want to make the, man, I'd rather have a bunch of, you can take my 206, draft Ollie Gordon, draft Woody, Devin Neal, give me 3/3. I'll take a shot on 3 running backs in the 3rd round and some receivers you don't want.
I was just going to say, you probably would have given up all your seconds for 8 third-round picks. Do you know what I mean? Like ever since probably the 203 and beyond, the 3rd round could get players that are just as good. Now, again, this is early, so it probably shakes out a little different once we see where they get drafted. But I did want to ask you guys about the QB. Like, is there at what point, it is a 12-team league. At what point do you just say, I can waste a pick on a quarterback, even though there isn't a great quarterback argument, probably much higher than where they would be now? Like, at what point do you say, all right, my starting quarterback is Jared Goff? Maybe I have a Jared Goff and another like Brock Purdy, and I've just been platooning them. Like, does that team even think about a quarterback? Do you take a shot on Milroe and just hope that there's a year or two where he is, or do you take Cam Ward? I mean, what? Because people will ask, where do I value the quarterbacks?
I think realistically, we could see them go in the 203 range. Like, once you get to that range where it's like, okay, these running backs, maybe they go 4th, 5th round, but a lot of it's going to come down to the need of league mates. If you have a team that needs a quarterback, I think that's the range they could go. But in this format, and Scott, we talked about this on, it might have been Trades in 5, might have been another conversation you and I had. But last year I was talking about in 1 quarterback leagues going Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams because of the format, because of the upside. And I think there's situations you could make a case going Milroe, going Jackson Dart over Cam Ward, over Shedeur Sanders, strictly because of the format. If 1 quarterback plus 4-2 scoring, you need upside. If you have a Jared Goff and you're looking for a big play guy, I don't think it's crazy. But yeah, for me, it's that 203-ish range.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, how do I value a quarterback that's already in the NFL relative to these picks? Because I don't think any of us are. The thought of drafting Jalen Milroe in a 1 QB with all the risk we already talked about in the super flex drafts of, I don't even feel comfortable drafting him. Taking him in a 1 QB over, half those running backs Ray listed, and there's another 5 or 6 that he didn't list. Feels like that's just a better shot than taking a quarterback. At the same time, like, what range would you have traded one of these picks to get Anthony Richardson? You know what I mean? Or a even better quarterback if that truly is a need. Because I think it's like, okay, do I want to trade the 106 for Jalen Hurts, or do I want to take Jalen Milroe in the 4th? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's very much haves or have-nots. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, or Ray, you have any thoughts on the QB value before we wrap this up?
Yeah,
it's tough,
not
right?
Not in round two. I don't believe Milroe is talented enough. I don't believe he's going to get the requisite capital for me to. Anthony Richardson is one thing when you're the 4th overall pick. Jaden Daniels, you're the 2nd overall pick. Like, I know you're going to get some leeway and leash, but I'm not there with Jalen Milroe. I do not believe he, nor do I believe Jackson Dart possesses enough rushing pass and passing upside to warrant it. I'm not going to take one. Like, I just won't. I won't. If I'm that down bad where I need a QB and 1 QB out of this class, I'm down bad. I need to figure something else out. I'll go find another option, but I feel like you're just wasting a pick. I really do. Not this year, not with these quarterbacks. And it's not even that it could have been Bo Nix, and I can make an argument for Nix. Like, okay, he's running around. There's some projected capital there, but this is I have zero interest in drafting one. Zero.
Yeah, it's
Let me
always
clarify my comment because I can see the comments in the chat rolling in, like just thinking about it. I'm not taking them clearly at that 203, 204. I just think there is going to be a situation where folks, I mean, they're down bad at quarterback, like you said,
because
Ray.
Are you not conditioned, JB? Are people not conditioned? Well, that's the range you normally just do it. Like
right.
that is, and I think because that's what we normally do. That you don't do it early. You normally do it in this range for this type of quarterback. But all I'll say is just because something's on the clearance rack doesn't mean you need to buy it. Okay? It's on sale. It's on the clearance rack. I see the pink sticker, but that does not mean you need to purchase it. I just don't think these quarterbacks are the ones you want to do it. I'd rather take a damn shot on Cam Scatterbo. I really would. I'd rather take Ollie Gordon than Shedeur Sanders here in a 1 QB league. I would hope I'm not plugging him in.
No, and it's just an interesting conversation we could probably have on another show of I struggle with valuing QBs in a 1 QB because, like, if I asked you, JB, or Ray, where would you value Tua Tagovailoa with these picks on the board? Is he really any different than the guys we just talked about? Like, do you really want to give up a second rounder for him in a 1 QB? No. So
he's not giving you much over replacement.
But here's the problem. In your league market, guess what? Tua and T-Law are probably somebody's QB 2 and 3, and they're on their roster. So you can't just go and, well, hey, you know what? Tua's your QB 3, so you should really value him as like a 5th rounder, and I'll give you a 4th. You know what I mean? Like, there is a reserve price that the quarterback market has because people probably are rostering 3 or 4 or 5 QBs. They shouldn't. But as soon as you want their T-Law or their Tua because you don't have one, the price is now probably a 2nd. And you're going, that's not really a good price for what they're giving me. But I think the market is interesting to talk about because I've seen that where you get a team in a 1 QB, they have 5 quarterbacks. They're never even using their QB 2 through 5.
And they're not going to move them at a reasonable price.
They know you have a need. And the question is, what are you willing to pay them to address your need versus what they should actually, I mean, the quarterback 20 should have no value on this board. But if that's somebody's QB3, they're not just going to go, well, yeah, that quarterback 20 doesn't have any value. I'll give him to you for a 4th. It's probably, if you're not going to give me a shot at a 2nd, then I'm good. You know what I mean? So the market is interesting. And sometimes the cheapest way to get them is, oh, yeah, somebody let me get Cam Ward at the 310. Okay. That's better than trading the 206 for Trevor Lawrence because somebody's going to make me pay that price. So just a discussion to end it on QBs. Final thoughts from either of you? This was a good mock. I enjoyed the 1 QB, even though that's probably not any of the formats that us 3 play in.
But here's the thing overall, like you mentioned, Scott, knowing your league market and the way positions are valued, not necessarily specific players, but positions in general, like you can take a lot of the same fundamentals from a 1 quarterback draft and apply it to a super flex draft. But again, it's knowing your league dynamic. Like I'm in some leagues, running back has absolutely very little value. So you just want to keep that in mind, apply whatever format. I know some people were poo-pooing on the last mock because it was a format they weren't familiar with the elevated tight ends, the 2 tight ends and a scoring premium. But just adjust based on your format. Like you can kind of see overall, but then, within the position, like we're looking here, like, yeah, Tyler Warren went 202. Ray took Harold Fannin at 209, but that's still giving you an idea of how we see this class and this position group. So you can adjust and apply that. Okay, Tyler Warren's not going to be a 202 in my tight end premium, but he's still okay. The tight end 1 that these guys have. So I think there are lessons to be learned in takeaways, even if it's not your specific format.
Great point. Ray, final thoughts from you?
And this is just going to be fun. It's going to be a fun process. And, as I look through the board now, I do think there are a couple of receivers that are probably going to work their way into at least people wanting them, getting the capital, landing on situation with opportunity. But by and large, like even early on, I think that based on, I've done these for a while now. If I had to think about how people are going to react to this, I think if you put Luther Burden right behind Mcmillian and then put Ibuka right behind Luther Burden, probably everything to the right of that is subject to who knows. I mean it. I know we sit here today and we say Singleton. I know a lot of people who say Allen's better than Singleton. He's the better running back. We talk about Judkins. A lot of people that think he's no special. Nothing, that Dylan Sampson's just as good as Quinshon Judkins. I think early in these mocks, a lot of our perception is based on our past experience and playing Dynasty and Devi. We've known these names for a while, but I can assure you, sure as the sun rises in the morning, once we get out of Mobile, because nobody was talking about Ladd McConkey, nobody was hyping up Marshawn Lloyd. Once we get out of Mobile and usher into that combine season, a lot of these names are going to start to settle into homes in the ADP board in which more people feel comfortable talking about them. So whether you're watching, doing your own, mock whomever you want anywhere. Because right now, I don't know if it's going to be Ollie, Woody, RJ Harvey, Devin Neal, LaQuint Allen, Katron Allen. None of us know. And they're all very, very comparable. And the good thing is they're all good. And I still want as many third and fourth round darts, not because I think they're all going to be great, but all I need is one Bucky Irving. All I need is one, and I'll be able to go buy whatever value Shedeur Sanders is in here, whatever value the tight end 4 is. I want opportunity darts this year after probably like the top 6 picks early on.
Love it. Great points by both of you to close it out. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this. Like, subscribe to the channel, DD Fantasy Football, DD FFB on YouTube. You can follow us on our Twitter handles, John at the Bauer Club, Ray at RayGQ, and myself at Charles Chill FFB. We're going to continue to do these. We'll do another 1QB. We'll do some crazy formats. We'll do some more heavy tight end premiums. We'll do some point per carry. We'll do a 2QB. I think a 2QB mock would be fun because now all of a sudden, like if you hit on a QB that starts, that's probably the same type of thing as hitting on a running back that starts in this type of format. So we're going to do these once or twice a week all the way up to the draft season. So stay tuned. Going to be a rotation of us on here talking through these formats. Leave comments. We'll all engage with you in the comments. And just be sure to like and subscribe to the content and continue to support the channel. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next mock. Peace.